Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Nick Keys. And Nick is a commercial real estate broker and investor based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He specializes in industrial real estate, specifically manufacturing, distribution, and flex-style properties. He's been in the commercial real estate brokerage industry since 2013 and an active investor and syndicator since 2015. You know, Nick lays out today some things about how you are going to find off-market deals. I mean, how you're going to start generating your own leads to finding projects, finding deals. I mean, he lays it out in 3 steps. There's 3 different things, and he goes in detail about how he does it as a broker. So I just think it's neat. You know, sometimes you wonder, well, how are these brokers developing these relationships and finding these projects? And he goes into detail about that today, even to the number of calls that maybe you should be making, and how to find the right people to call. So I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. I hope it leads, you to your next lead, of something you're going to close. Quickly, I want to share with you a sponsor of the show and someone that this business has helped us personally to just build credibility and build loyalty with our investors. And that is lifelonggifts.com. They can send out gifts that have your investor's name on it. I mean, think about that. If you send it out right now before the holidays and, you sent them a nice knife set that they're enjoying with their entire family around the table with their family name on it, and they're going to be thinking about you even at that time, right? It's just a great way to say thank you, make that connection, build that loyalty component, it's just something I love doing with our investors and other people that that just help me in different ways. It's just lifelonggifts.com. I encourage you to look them up. Nick, welcome to the show. It's an honor to meet you and to have you on the show. You have some skill sets that are going to help our listeners today, to say the least. And just from your background and being in commercial real estate, it's going to be so helpful. Tell the listeners a little more about what you do right now, and let's jump right in.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Whitney. Pleasure to be here. A little bit about myself. I'm a Wisconsin native. I was born and raised in northern Wisconsin and eventually moved south to the Milwaukee area about 15 years ago. My background has always been in sales. One of my first jobs in high school was actually telemarketing. So this was before robocalls, but people despised us just the same. After I graduated college, I worked for a home improvement company. I was doing in-home sales for kitchen and bath remodels. And it was 1 call appointment, 1 call close. So the expectation is I'd show up, demo the products, and then try to close the customer sitting at the kitchen table. So you don't know what you're made of until you're, at somebody's table at 8:30 at night asking them to buy a $30,000 kitchen. So I learned a lot, to say the least. But a short time later, I decided to get more serious in real estate and construction on a larger level. I got my real estate license and I joined the Dickman company in 2013 as a sales agent. I continued to educate myself and then became a broker in 2015. And a few years later, I eventually made partner in the firm in 2017. So.
Nice. No, that's an interesting background. That's funny too. You say you don't know what you're made of until you're sitting at someone's dining room table at 8:30 at night trying to sell them a $30,000 kitchen. No, that's definitely a learning experience, to say the least. And I think that's a good lead into some skill sets that you have. Just being a broker and how you can help the listeners today and in generating leads, right? I think that is a skill set that, most people are listening, if they're an operator trying to become an operator, that they need to work on. But let's jump right into that and get us started a little bit with some things around thinking through generating leads and how you can help us do that.
Sure. So before we dive in, I do want to note, when it comes to brokerage, we are an industrial real estate brokerage firm. So our niche is manufacturing, warehouse, distribution facilities. So you'll hear me talk about a couple of different things here today. Most of what I say will translate to multifamily, self-storage, mobile home parks, whatever it may be. but my specialty is industrial real estate. So if I'm successful here today, listeners will learn kind of a step-by-step approach to find off-market opportunities. The market is extremely competitive. Everyone is looking for that advantage. They want to find a deal that hasn't been seen by everybody yet, and this will hopefully help them do that. I don't want to talk myself out of a job, right? I am a broker, but I want to give people some tools that they can use and implement to go out in the market and find success. So as we dive in here, the first thing that I would encourage people to do is identify the type of deal that you're looking for. This seems super simple, right? But it's incredibly important. If you're a new investor, this may take you a while to figure out. You're going to need to underwrite multiple deals or research multiple asset types to really figure out what's best for you and your market specifically. If you've done your research, ask yourself, is what I'm looking for based in market reality? And what I mean by that is, can you really find a Class B property fully stabilized at a 10 cap? Probably not, but you're not going to understand the market, and you're not going to know that unless you really do a deep dive into what's available and what's possible.
I appreciate how you said, do some underwriting there. I just think that's going to teach you a lot about that market where, you're going to figure out that a 10 cap's not realistic.
Yeah, exactly. So once you do identify that asset, and I'm a big believer in visualization, write it down, right? Like, you want to put this somewhere that you can see it, throw a Post-it note on your computer screen. You want to look at this every day. One of the hardest parts of lead generation or brokerage or sales in general is staying focused and being intentional with your time. It's super easy to get distracted in today's day and age. So now you've written it down and identified what it is you're looking for. Step 2 would be to broadcast. This is basically sharing with others what it is that you're looking to do. The first place I tell people to start, or that I have even started, is within your inner circle. So start with your friends and family. This is where you want to get comfortable discussing and sharing exactly what you intend to do. And that way everybody knows what you're looking for. This will help you gain confidence and kind of help you hone your pitch before you start sharing it more broadly. One thing I would be ready for, though, is recoil. Your inner circle may pose some tough questions, or they might press you to provide some additional detail. Not everybody is always supportive, especially when you get out, you start a new venture, you're kind of reaching for bigger and better things. There may be some pushback. So it's one thing to be prepared for, but once you get through your friends and family, the next step is to literally move on to just about everybody else.
I think it's neat you say, be ready for some pushback, some recoil there. It's a new thing, right? I mean, this is a new thing that those people haven't heard you talk about that before. They haven't seen you in that light yet. And so there's going to be questions. I think even those questions, you may not have good answers for them right then, but it's going to help you to be better prepared for when you get those answers in the future.
Absolutely. You'll be, hopefully more comfortable with those closest to you, and you can kind of stumble through all of that before you get out into the big world.
Hopefully they're the nicest, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the most forgiving. So the second way to kind of broadcast or intentionally share would be with just about every other person you know. This is your neighbor, your insurance agent, Uber driver, the guy sitting next to you at your kid's soccer game, right? I mean, literally everybody is a possible lead source. So the key with this is to direct your conversation towards the lead you're trying to generate. Now, what you don't want to do is blurt out, "Hi, I'm Nick, I'm looking for a deal to buy," when somebody asks if you're standing in line at the grocery store, right? But you want to try to mention it as part of your elevator pitch, or bring it up if somebody asks, what are you interested in? So I can tell you, when I meet somebody in a business setting, I'll usually say something to the effect of, "Hi, my name's Nick Keys. I'm a commercial real estate broker, specialize in industrial real estate. I help users and investors buy and sell manufacturing warehouse distribution facilities." At this point, most people will nod and be like, "Okay, sure." They have no idea what I'm talking about, right? So what I do in real estate, commercial real estate brokerage, it's common. My focus is very specific. It's industrial. So I engage them further. I'll follow up to their response and I'll say, "Oh, cool. Are you familiar with the industry?" and they'll either say yes or no. So if they say yes, great, that's awesome. Are you in manufacturing? Are you an investor yourself? Tell me more. If they say no, I have no idea what that is, I'll dive deeper, right? I'll explain the clients I deal with, the geographic area that I cover, any unique nuance of my industry that they might align with. So either way, they're going to get to know me a little bit better. We're going to engage in, a conversation. And my goal is to share and make that connection with somebody, because at the end of the day, they could end up being a referral source for you in the future.
Love that. And there's been a few shows I've talked about how you just never know who you're speaking to, right? You just never know who that person is. You can't judge a book by its cover. I've learned that so many times. And it doesn't matter what somebody's wearing. It doesn't matter, all those things that you want to prejudge someone by. But I liked how you said, like, everybody's a possible lead source. They may not have the actual deal, but hey, they may know the person that does.
Right. Absolutely. The third way that you can broadcast, and this is what a lot of people jump to, social media. It may sound simple because everyone's familiar with it. In my opinion, this is the easiest to fail at. So we can use LinkedIn, for example. I'm sure listeners have seen this. I've seen it countless times. Somebody will hop on LinkedIn and they post, "Attention network, I'm looking for a real estate investment." And that's it, right? They get a couple of likes or a comment from their uncle. It's like, "Good job, go get them." But that's it. So if you're going to use social, or you're going to use LinkedIn for lead generation, you really have to have a plan and take it seriously. There's tons of content out there. Writers, influencers, they specialize in how to drive traffic, right? How to generate leads on a specific medium. A person to highlight that I think does a great job on LinkedIn, other than you, Whitney, would be Gary Vee. A lot of people have seen his short videos. They're high impact. He's got captions. It works awesome for that medium. So, you could start following somebody like him today for a crash course in, social media engagement. It'd be a great place to start. If you do want to dive into LinkedIn, a good starting point is to connect, right? So you want to seek out like-minded individuals, start following influential people within the industry you're looking to find deals in. LinkedIn's algorithm, they'll put you in connection with different people based on their likes and interests. And the more people that you're connected with, the larger your network is and your reach is. So if you share something, it'll pop up on their timeline and vice versa. So it's a great way to reach scale quickly based on the number of people that you're connected with.
I like that. I love how you said it's the easiest to fail at as well. But following people like Gary Vee, you're going to get some great ideas, right? It's going to be hard to keep up with somebody like Gary Vee, but I think it's like he posts like 70 sometimes a day or something. And so or has that much content anyway. And so, yeah, but man, you can learn a lot just by watching somebody like that. That's almost like mastered that the art of social media, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great way to educate yourself on what's possible on social. So now step 3 in finding a deal or generating a lead, and this is going to make the hair on the back of some people's necks stand up. It's cold calling. Okay. And this is something that might sound like nails on a chalkboard to you. I've talked to countless people over the years and they refuse to cold call. They say they don't like the rejection. It's not worth their time. It's hard to prioritize. Whatever the excuse is, in my opinion, these people are leaving money on the table. Okay. I won't sit here and, tell you that the rejection of cold calling is easy to deal with, but it absolutely works. Okay. I'm speaking from experience here. It's one thing you could literally start doing right now. It will have a massive impact on your business. Whitney, is, you'll probably agree, being successful in real estate, this isn't rocket science, right? You need to find a solid deal and execute. 50% of that equation is finding the deal. So when people are stuck behind the screen, right, they're sitting at their computer, they're on LoopNet or they're on the MLS, or maybe they talk to a couple of brokers casually to source their leads. By doing that, they're putting 50% of their success into the hands of somebody else. Wouldn't you rather have control, right? I mean, wouldn't you rather have influence over where your deals are coming from? So in getting started, cold calling can take multiple forms. There's three main methods that I focus on and I use in my day-to-day business. They're dialing for dollars, knocking on doors, and networking. I'm sure listeners have heard a number of them, but I do mine just a little bit different. The first one to start with would be dialing for dollars. A lot of people call that cold calling. It's fairly typical. What's unique about what I do is how I generate my lists of prospects to call. A lot of people will buy a list, right? Or they'll go online and they'll search, a record database of foreclosed properties, or they'll do one way or another to pull it. I typically generate my list based on the door knocking that I've been doing, and I'll get to that in a second, what exactly that is. But let's say I don't have a list, right? I need to generate one. I'll go through a mix of different resources that aren't necessarily me buying a list online. I may find leads through the business journal. Most municipalities have a local business journal. You have death notices, you have tax liens and foreclosures at the back of the paper or available online. You may also read an article regarding a business that's closing, right? And they just let go of a bunch of employees, or maybe they're expanding, right? And they just acquired another company. You may see posts on social media about companies announcing they just purchased a new equipment line, or they're doing a huge hiring of a bunch of new employees. Any of these are possible resources, right? You need to dig a little bit deeper. It's okay, what's the question behind the question? Why are they doing that? Is it because business is great, or are they in a bad state and perhaps they need to do something to help them with that? The last way to potentially generate some prospects would be Google Maps. Now, this is going to sound crazy to some of you, but it is a way to do a quick look at a targeted area. For example, a business park. You can see that a building has deferred maintenance, or the parking lot is overflowing. Any of these things could indicate the health of the business that's inside. So once I have my list of properties, it's time to start dialing. When I start making calls, turn off notifications on my phone, close out of the email on my desktop. I try to be as focused as I can with the person on the other end of the call. A live call with a prospect is a high pressure game, and it's winner take all. If you miss a detail because you're reading, a text message, or you don't hear the inflection in their voice because you're flipping through your emails, you're missing very important information about that prospect. So to give you an example, I pick up the phone, I make a call, I let the person on the other end know who I am. Most of the time, the response I get is, "Don't call me again, bye." Or, "We have absolutely no interest in selling," right? This is brutal. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but sometimes you do get people to engage. They might say, "Well, we're not going to sell now, but who knows what will happen in 6 months or a year." Boom, light bulb goes off. And you think, okay, what if I press them a little bit more? So if the situation is right, I'll say, well, is the business not doing very well? Questions like that get people talking, right? That will get their attention, and they immediately jump into defense. They start telling me about how good the business is. They just hired a bunch of employees. Things are rocking and rolling for them. Now I have a conversation going, right? And now I can develop a little bit of a relationship. It doesn't always go somewhere, right? But I've at least made a new connection. I can, wrap that conversation up if it's not going to take me to a deal on that phone call, and I'll log that person into my CRM. Making these calls will feel like a hamster wheel, right? Especially if you sit down and you're like, okay, I'm going to find a deal this week. You're going to go round and round, and you might not make very much progress, but on one of these calls, inevitably, you'll hear, "I can't believe you just called. Your timing is great." To the person on the other end of the phone, I just dropped out of the sky. I'm calling to talk about exactly what's on their mind. But for me, this is the 80th cold call I've made in the last 2 weeks, right? So the point to highlight is that you have to put in reps. You have to be focused and intentional with your calls. This is really a game of persistence, and in real estate, persistence pays.
Are you about to start a podcast or producing a podcast and tired of doing the editing yourself? We have produced over 1,000 daily shows, and the production team that I've created, they're now available to produce shows for you as well. We can do as little or as much as you need, from finding and communicating with guests, preparing introductions, to editing the audio and video. You will sound better, have a more professional presence, and be able to spend your time doing other valuable tasks on your business. Let me know you're interested by emailing me directly at whitney@lifebridgecapital.com. That's such good information right there. I mean, thinking about cold calling, I know a lot of people would be nervous around that. And you were highlighting like things to think about. You have to be in the call. You have to be paying attention. You have to be listening to all those little details. That can seem intimidating, I bet, to many of the listeners thinking through that. But it's so crucial. And I think you just got to get in there and get started, right? It's like podcasting, right? The first 20 may be horrible, or the first 100 maybe in my case, but hey, you're never going to get to the 100th show if you don't get started, right? And I feel like in this case, hey, you're never going to get better at that conversation on the phone if you never get started, right? And so, when you mentioned like 80th call in a couple of weeks, how many calls should we try to make? What's even possible? Like, what should we be? What's a good target, and maybe even a percentage of closings, for the number of calls?
That's a great question. If you are going to get into brokerage, for example, like what I do, new hires will start out making 100 calls, 200 calls a day. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of calling. I can tell you that my weekly goal is about 50 calls. Now, these are targeted, they're quality, they're people that I've either researched or businesses that I've seen, within the news in the last couple of weeks. But I'll make 50 calls. Of those 50, I usually talk to about 15 people. Of those 15 people, I usually generate like 2 to 3 leads, and I usually set one appointment. So if you look at the whole timeline, and we're going from 50 prospects down to 1 meeting. So there's an adage, you make 100 calls to, set 10 meetings to make 1 sale. I wouldn't say it's exact, but it's not too far off. For listeners that are out there, if you could designate even an hour a week where you sit down, you get ready, maybe you've done some homework leading up to that hour, but you have 10 people and I'm going to cold call these 10 people. You might breeze through them in 15 minutes, right? And then you're ready for more. It's like, okay. Or you might not have any success, and it's like, okay, I'm going to shelf that until next week, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit it again.
No, that's great advice. And I wanted to speak to, or have you speak to, you generating that list, right? It's so important. Like 200 calls a day. I mean, wow, what an accomplishment to be able to get done, through that many calls. You're going to learn so much so fast, right? Having that just repetitive conversations like that and trying to guide that conversation. But you talked about 50 calls a week, and obviously it's more targeted. And that takes me back to like generating that list. So important, right? Sure. I mean, where you got the list from, how you're focusing that list. Any more tips around like focusing that list? Maybe you're going to get there in a minute. If you are, let's do that. But we didn't want to forget to like think a little more, have you speak a little more to like generating that list. So that's more focused on, hey, exactly what you're targeting. Like the first thing you said was identify the type of deal you're looking for, right? Are there ways around, targeting that list towards that type of project or towards somebody that's more motivated or anything like that?
Absolutely. So the way that I typically generate the list, and again, this won't translate to every product type. It won't translate to every market, but I've found that in Wisconsin, specifically southeastern Wisconsin, this is the best way to find a prospect organically. And if you do translate this to your industry or your niche, I'm going to go out on a limb here. It's going to 10x the leads that you're seeing. This sounds so silly. Knocking on doors. A lot of people are going to be like, well, what do you mean? You mean like actually knocking on a door? I mean, yes. Like, I want you to get in the car. I want you to go for a drive. If you're looking for, self-storage facilities, I want you to go and drive around every single self-storage facility that's within 10 miles of where you want to wind up. And what you're looking for is the condition of the building. Are there cars parked in front of it? How is it maintained? Is it staffed? There's so much that you can learn just by taking a drive, past the building. So going back to what I do, industrial, it looks like this when I go out knocking on doors. I drive to one of the industrial parks or the business parks that's within our geographic area. I take a lap up and down the street and I'm on the hunt, okay? I'm looking for a few key indicators. I'm looking for overgrown landscaping, right? If somebody's not mowing their lawn, it's either because they don't care about the quality of their product or their property, or they can't afford to pay somebody else to do it. So that's a key indicator. I look at the condition and if the parking lot is full or not. This may seem like an odd thing, but if there's no cars parked in front of a warehouse facility, probably means that there's nobody inside working, right? Or if the parking lot is basically turned to gravel, it's because somebody does not want to spend the money on making that large capital improvement, right? So it's another key indicator. The last one is something where you just know it when you see it. The building's run down, right? It needs paint. It needs gutters and downspouts. There's a tree growing out of the gutter on the roof, right? Like it looks like it needs a hot shower and a shave. This is another key indicator, okay? So you have this list of items that checks all of these boxes. You think to yourself, this is great. I got a lead, right? I write down the address and your first instinct, or what a lot of people want to do, is drive home. They're going to hop online. They're going to see what I can pull. Is there an old tax bill, or is an article about the building going vacant or something like that? Stop. Where everybody leaves money on the table is they drive away. Instead of going home and hopping on your computer, drive into the parking lot, park the car, go inside, ask if anyone's around to talk to, right? The door's not always going to be open, but if it is, go inside, right? See if there's a receptionist there. See if somebody is willing to talk to you. A lot of the time, there won't be anybody there, and then you write down the address and you go home. But every once in a while, there'll be somebody sitting there and you just introduce yourself. My name is Nick. I'm a real estate broker. I have somebody that wants to buy a building in the area. Is anybody around to chat with? You never know who's going to be standing there when you walked in. I can't tell you how many times I've walked in and I've said that, and boom, it's the business owner, right? And he's standing there talking to the receptionist, and we'll dive right into a conversation. Doesn't always lead to the deal, but I just went from driving around to identifying a property to talking face to face with a decision maker. And in my opinion, there's no way you can prospect more efficient than that.
Great advice. Yeah. And I think so many things are going to come out of that, right? You're going to learn so much more about your market and driving around and seeing different buildings. And I think too, as you're in a market over a long period of time, especially if you continue doing that, like you're going to know that building, that property, and a year later, something's going to come up, right? And you're going to remember a conversation you had about it, a year before or 2 years before. And I don't want us to run out of time. I wanted you to be able to keep going on I mean, we went through the cold calling and dialing for dollars, knocking on doors, networking, and we're talking about those different things. But I wanted you to be able to keep going on some of that because that was really good info.
Yeah. So the last kind of piece to finding the deal would be networking. And I don't want this to be like a dirty word, right? Like a lot of people, they hear networking and they think of that random sales rep that hits you up on LinkedIn and they're like, hey, we should network. And you're like, hit the bricks, buddy, right? Like that's not what I'm talking about here. I want you to think of networking as building relationships within your community. This isn't something that happens overnight. It's something that, needs to occur organically. It's going to take a year or 2 years or 3 years, but again, this is a long game. Real estate is something that you have to commit time today and be prepared to not see a result for years to come. So as you get involved with networking, a great avenue to pursue is being involved with charities or community groups. I know, Whitney, you do an awesome job and you have your foundation and you're incredibly involved with that. And I'm sure it's, opened some doors and helped you create some connections through what you do. So this could be something like, you're helping out at the local food pantry, or you're involved in your neighborhood HOA, or if you like playing sports, maybe you organize a weekend or a rec league or something like that. But why these are awesome places to network is because most people attending these groups are there for a cause. So it removes that layer of self-interest, right? It's not like you're standing at a business, cocktail hour hosted by the Rotary Club and everyone's there flicking business cards, right? I mean, you're in a space where you're able to give back to the community while still building those relationships. So I found a lot of success with that. It's one of those things where it kind of removes the pressure and it almost feels like a space where you're not there to do business, right? You're just there to help out.
Oh, that is awesome. Another great tip. I've heard different people talk about getting involved with nonprofits and in adding value, right? Helping out, getting involved in other things that are happening like that. But man, yeah, it's a great way to network with other people, that are like-minded or behind that cause that you're passionate about as well. Well, Nick, changing gears a little bit here, just a few final questions, and just want to draw from your experience and expertise as well, and thinking through obviously just the current market situation and where we're headed, and I like to ask guests like yourself, how do we prepare for a downturn? If we are considering a potential downturn in the next year or so, or 6 months, or whatever it may be, how do you like to see operators being prepared? Maybe as you being an investor, or just as you're a broker, working with different operators, how do you see different operators just be prepared for the unknown?
I would say don't let the appeal of a 1031 skew your decision making. So we've seen just a flood of money come in chasing these deals, and industrial has really become a popular product class to diversify a little bit from multifamily and office and retail. And one piece of advice I give a lot of investors that come to this market is, we are in the Midwest. You do need to be conservative, right? We don't necessarily see the levels of appreciation that East Coast and West Coast does. So conservative underwriting, hold your reserves and be diverse, right? So whether that's where you're going to source your deals from or the type of assets that you own, you need to make sure that you're spreading some of that risk out over multiple asset classes.
No doubt about it. That's for sure. What about any ways that you talked about networking with foundations, or I'm not just foundations, but just giving back in that way and being connected and in the community, whatnot. But any other ways that you are connecting with investors, or ways that you found beneficial to network?
Yeah, so a couple of organizations I'm involved in. One is the UW-Milwaukee Alumni Association. So I've sat on the board for a couple of years there, and it's a great opportunity to engage with people in the community as well as students coming out of school, and they're working to broaden their network and make those connections. So that's been a great opportunity. Beyond that, my wife and I do volunteer with a charity out by us. It's called Blessings in a Backpack, and they provide school children with meals to take home with them on Friday afternoons as they go home for the weekend. And we have a terrible problem here with kids, going hungry and not having food outside of what they're served in school. So giving back through that foundation has helped us come out in the community and make some deeper connections with people.
Nick, do you have any daily habits that you are disciplined about that have helped you achieve success?
I am not a morning person, but I wake up at 4:45 every morning. And I get right into the day. I start working out. I exercise the mind. I read my 10 pages. A lot of the stuff that you can pick up in Hal Elrod's book, Miracle Morning, I've applied, and it's been great. But the one thing with sales and with real estate specifically, you have to be persistent, right? So if you have one trade or one thing that you're doing every day, you got to get in the repetitions. You got to be persistent in what you do, because at the end of the day, persistence pays.
No, that's awesome. And it's interesting you say you're not a morning person, but you're up at 4:45 every morning.
Yeah,
I hear
it's tough, but you got to do it.
Yeah, I hear people say, I can't do that. I'm just not a morning person. I'm like, that you're tricking yourself, right? You can do it.
Right.
You can do it. What about number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Number one thing that's contributed to my success, I would say continually learning. I will be the first one to say I wasn't the smartest student, growing up in school, but it is something that I actively seek out, right? I'm always, listening to webinars, and I'm attending conferences and reading books on real estate, and doing anything that I can to help, broaden my understanding of the industry, and help meet new people, right? I mean, you never know where that connection or that next deal is going to come from.
And I know that you shared a little bit about you and your wife and how you all help in the community earlier, but I always like to ask, how do you like to give back?
So the work that we do with Blessings in a Backpack is kind of the main thing for us. Over the last couple of years, we've become more involved with that foundation, and we try to dedicate as much as our time that we can to that group.
Yeah. Nick, grateful for that. Just sharing that. I think it's always great to raise awareness for groups like that are doing great things in the communities. But grateful for your time today. Pleasure to meet you, get to know you better. And, I often, wondered, how are them brokers finding those deals, right? How are they getting all those connections? And I just appreciate you going through some of those steps today that you take. And I know it was very valuable to many people that are looking for those projects, looking for those deals. And man, you even said, hey, if you got an hour a week, hey, you can be making some calls, right? And you can be going to that property like you're talking about and knocking on the door and talking to people. And so I just appreciate you breaking it down, identifying the deal and how to broadcast it, and and even the cold calling and the fear around that, and that it doesn't have to be that fearful. And so grateful for your time, Nick. How can the listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you?
You can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Nick Keys, or shoot me an email, nick@dickmanrealestate.com. Or if you really want to, find me, come to Milwaukee. We're the city of music festivals, and we're the home to Miller Brewing. So we'll show you a great time if you come to town.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.